हरि ओम। ओम श्री गणेशाय नमः। ओम श्री हिरण्यगर्भाय नमः। ओम श्री महाविष्णवे नमः। ओम श्री महादेवाय नमः। ओम श्री महादुर्गाय नमः। ओम श्री राम रामाय नमः। ओम श्री सद्गुरवे नमः। ओम समस्त जन कल्याणे निरतं करुणामयम् नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम् शंकरं शंकराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानामालयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। शङ्करं परमानन्दं ब्रह्मनिष्ठं यतीश्वरम् भाष्यभ्रान्तिहरं वन्दे शुद्धज्ञानैकबोधकम्। ॐ नमः शिवाय। 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 नमः पार्वती पतये। हर हर महादेव। हरि ओम हरि ओम। We'll begin with the Shanti mantra. Om Bhadram Karneभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः स्तुष्टुवागंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति न पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्ताक्षो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ओम शांति शांति शांति। हरि ओम। We shall chant from the 5th mantra of the 4th section. अत्रैष देव स्वप्ने महिमानम् अनुभवति यद्दृष्टं दृष्टम् अनुपश्यति श्रुतं श्रुतम् एव अर्थम् अनुशृणोति देशदिगन्तरैश्च प्रत्यनुभूतं पुनः पुनः प्रत्यनुभवति दृष्टं च दृष्टं च श्रुतं च श्रुतं च अनुभूतं च अनुभूतं च सच्च सर्वं पश्यति सर्वः पश्यति. स यदा तेजसा विभूतो भवति अत्र एष देव स्वप्नान् न पश्यति अथ तत् एतस्मिन् शरीरे एतत् सुखं भवति. So Pippalada Rishi is answering the questions of the fourth seeker. His questions about Swapna and Sushupti. Understanding these three avasthas will help us to understand that Supreme Self. So who is the Devata who sees the dream? Katara esha deva swapnan pashyati kasya etat sukham bhavati, for whom is the sukha, the happiness, and kasminnu sarve pratishtita bhavanti, and on what are all these factors fixed? What is that which supports all these factors? So that all these questions are answered by Pippalada Rishi. About a deep sleep, he says, Isa yada tejasa vibhuto bhavati, atra esha deva swapnam na pashyati, atha tat etasmin sharire etas sukham bhavati. This mind, antakarana, which is there in the moving in the nadis, when the mind gets overpowered by the teja, the brilliance of that pitta, which is there in that nadi, because of that brilliance of pitta, the mind stops expressing the dream, and it goes into what we call sushupti avastha. And there it becomes one. It remains there in a dormant state, becoming one with the self, which is of the nature of happiness. So mind remains there as happiness. Mind remains in the self as happiness. So etasmin sharire etat sukham bhavati. It becomes of the nature of happiness, which is our own supreme self. Shankaracharya writes, कि एतस्मिन् काले अविद्या काम कर्म निबंधनानि कार्यकरणानि शांतानि भवन्ति. That in deep sleep, all the various factors like avidya, kama, karma, ignorance, and the kamana, which is born from ignorance, and various types of karma which we perform due to this kamana, which gets expressed in the various effects and causes, karya, karanani, shantani bhavanti, all of them becomes quiet in deep sleep. They just remain there dormant without expressing. Just like we have a doll which is powered by the battery. So when you put the battery and the battery is on, then the doll moves, the doll dances. But when you switch off the battery, then what happens? The doll just remains steady at one stage itself. No activities are seen in the doll. Why? Because the power of the battery doesn't reach the motors which guides the movement of that doll. The batteries which gives the power to the motor which moves, and because of that movement, the doll also moves. The battery power is not supplied, it is restrained. Similarly, this mind, it is powered by the batteries of prana. So the pranas, they stop supplying that power and the mind remains dormant. So no activities are there. So teshu shanteshu atmaswarupam upadibhihi anyatha vibhavyamanam advayam ekam shivam shantam bhavati. And when the mind becomes calm, quiet, peaceful, then what happens? It remains as that Shivaswarupa Atma alone. There is no division of any kind. All divisions are just imagined by the mind due to avidya. But when the mind becomes quiet, teshu shanteshu atmaswarupam upadhibihi anyatha vibhavyamanam advayam. That Atma Swarup, which is Advaya, which is one without a second, Ekam, which is Ekam, Shivam, completely auspicious, Shantam, extremely peaceful, that alone remains Bhavati. Iti etam eva avastham prativyadi avidya kritamatran praveshena darshitam drashtantam aha. To show this, the teacher gives one drishtanta in the following mantra. A beautiful example is given that what happens when we go to sleep. What happens when the mind, the intellect, the senses go to sleep? See, the pure self doesn't go to sleep. There are no avasthas in the pure self. In the Shuddha Atma, there are no avasthas like Jagra, Swapna, Sushupti or Turiya. All these avasthas belong to the mind. When the senses are active along with the mind, and when one perceives the world outside, it is called a Jagrat Avastha. When the senses get withdrawn into the mind, and when the mind alone is active, it is called Swapna Avastha. When the power supplied to the mind is restrained, when the mind gets overpowered by the pitta and the mind stops functioning, it remains dormant. That is the Sushupti Avastha. So in Sushupti Avastha, that Atma alone remains as it is, without the disturbance of the mind and the senses, etc. So a beautiful example is given to convey this state. In the next mantra, let us chant mantra number 7. Sa yatha somya vayamsi vaso vriksham sampratishtante एवं हवै तत्सर्वं पर आत्मनि सम्प्रतिष्ठते स यथा सौम्य वयांसि वासो वृक्षं सम्प्रतिष्ठन्ते एवं हवै तत्सर्वं पर आत्मनि सम्प्रतिष्ठते. The teacher says sa yatha. It is just like a Soumya. Oh, my dear student, Vayamsi, like the birds. The birds, Vaso Vriksham, they come to roost on the tree. Some Pratishtante, there they just settle down on that tree. Evam Havaitat Sarvam, in the same way, all this will be described in detail in the next mantra, but all this means all the senses, the mind, and everything, the body, everything. Para Atmani Sampratisthate, they remain abiding in that supreme Atma, in the supreme self. So deep sleep is the most fascinating experience which gives us the glimpse of enlightenment. Deep sleep is like a in-between zone. On this side is bondage, on the other side is liberation. On this side is samsara, on the other side is moksha. Just like two countries, they have a border in between. So that border is neither this country nor the other country. Or that border is both this country, part of this country, and part of other country also. Like if you go to see the Niagara Falls from the American side, it appears in one particular way. But then you want to see how it looks from the other side also, on the Canadian side. But if you don't have proper permission, you cannot go there. You are stopped. You are told entry is banned. You cannot go. But if you cross that border, you are on the other side, you are in the other country. Similarly, the deep sleep is like the border. On this side, we have the Jagrat and Swapna. Jagrat Avastha is there, Swapna Avastha is there. But if you are able to understand and transcend this Swapna Sushupti, you will reach the Turiya. So from one standpoint, if we look, then we call it Sushupti. From the standpoint of ignorance, when we look at it, we call it Sushupti Avastha, deep sleep. But when that self is understood properly, then that itself is Turiya. Because in deep sleep, there are no divisions of any kind. There is no Dvaita. So it's the most fascinating. So here, the Rishi gives an example that what happens. He says, सदृष्टान्तो यथा एन प्रकारेण सौम्य प्रिय दर्शन वयांसि पक्षिणः वासार्थं वृक्षं वासो वृक्षं प्रति संप्रतिष्ठन्ते गच्छन्ति एवं यथा दृष्टान्तो हवै तत् वक्ष्यमाणं सर्वं पर आत्मनि अक्षरे संप्रतिष्ठते. Just like the birds, you must have seen the birds. During the day, they fly everywhere in search of food. But in the evening, they all birds of the same feather, they come on a particular tree or many trees, if more birds are there. They come to roost on a tree. If you have experience, so many birds, they suddenly flock on a particular tree and make such a huge big noise also, chirruping, and they make such a big noise, and they come on that one tree. What do they do actually? They exchange their, they communicate with each other. Maybe they tell what they did during the day, where food is available, where one should be careful, predators are there. They exchange information, they socialize, they tweet, and big noise is there. And suddenly they stop making noise and they just remain very quiet on that tree. They roost, they remain silent throughout the night. They are just there. If from a distance, if you look at the tree, you will see that there is only a tree. You don't see the birds also. Only the tree is seen there. The birds remain hidden in the tree. They are protected by the tree. But they are present. The birds are not dead. The birds are not, but they are not functioning. They are just stationary there. Most fascinating. And then in the morning, again they wake up and start flying in different directions. Same thing happens in deep sleep. What is the tree? That supreme self is like the tree. It will be described in detail later on. That supreme self is like the tree. And during our waking and dream, our senses, our mind, they are like birds flying here and there in search of food, in search of happiness, in search of some pleasures, in search of some power, in search of some vote, if you're standing for election. So they move around here and there. But then the senses get tired and they are withdrawn into the mind. Senses are more gross. So when we lie down to sleep, the first thing is the senses get withdrawn into the mind. But the mind is subtle. The mind has got more energy. So the mind continues to function even when one is sleeping. So that is what we call dream. And then mind also gets tired and mind also withdraws itself. And what remains? The Supreme Self alone remains. The mind merges into that Supreme Self. Means mind remains in the Supreme Self, but that mind doesn't get dissolved. The senses don't get dissolved. They remain there. Again, when we wake up, again they wake up. Just like the birds don't disappear. The birds don't become the tree, the birds remain there, but they remain very dormant. Similarly, all these senses, the mind, and all remain in that self as the self. And again, when they wake up, again the waking and the dream starts. So, this is a very beautiful example given. So, what are the various factors which go and reside in that supreme self? The details are given in the next mantra. So let us chant mantra number 8. पृथ्वी च पृथ्वी मात्रा च आपश्चापो मात्रा च तेजश्च तेजो मात्रा च वायुश्च वायु मात्रा च आकाशश्चाकाश मात्रा च चक्षुश्च द्रष्टव्यं च श्रोत्रं च श्रोतव्यं च घ्राणं च घ्रातव्यं च रसश्च रसयितव्यं च त्वक् स्पर्शयितव्यं च वाक् च वक्तव्यं च हस्तौ च दातव्यं च चोपस्थश्च आनन्दयितव्यं च पायुश्च विसर्जयितव्यं च पादौ च गन्तव्यं च मनश्च मन्तव्यं च बुद्धिश्च बोद्धव्यं च अहङ्कारश्चाहङ्कर्तव्यं च चित्तं च चेतयितव्यं च तेजश्च विद्योतयितव्यं च प्राणश्च विधारयितव्यं च. All these factors, they remain in that self like the birds roosting. Just as the bird roosts on the tree, all these factors remain in that self. Self alone is there. So what are the factors? Prithvi cha prithvi matra cha. Prithvi, the earth. The earth also resides in that self alone. The division that this is earth, this is water, this is fire, this is air, this is space. All the division doesn't remain there. Just as I gave the example of the castle which is made from the sand. You make the castle, you make the king, queen, the ministers and all people. So just imagine the king is looking at the queen. But just imagine the power to look is withdrawn, then what happens from everyone? The power to look, power to think, power to feel is withdrawn, then what happens? Then everything remains there as sand. The king remains as sand, the queen remains as sand. Everything remains as sand. No division of any kind is there, because the vision to see division is not there. That vision which is created by avidya, which sees division, which sees dvaita, is not there. So everything remains as one. In the same way, the five elements, along with their cause. So Prithvi, and what is the cause of Prithvi? What is the source of Prithvi? The Tanmatra. So Prithvi cha stula panchaguna. So Prithvi has got five qualities: Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. And that karana cha Prithvi matra, and the cause of that Prithvi Matra. Prithvi Matra is Gandha Tan Matra. The Tan Matra of Gandha itself. So from the Gandha Tan Matra alone, this Prithvi is born through the process of Panchikaranam and then Trivrit Karanam, which gave rise to this world and which gave rise to our body also, and which gave rise to our all these factors in this world. So that all this comes to roost in that Supreme Self. Tatha apascha apo matra cha, then apa means water, and apo matra, the tan matra of water, that is rasa. The rasa. Then tejascha tejo matra cha, then teja, the fire, and the tan matra fire is the rupa. Vayuscha vayu matra, vayu, and the tan matra vayu is sparsha. Akashcha akasha matra cha, and the akash and akasha matra is the tan matra called shabda. Stulani cha sukshmani cha bhutani ityartah. So it means all the stula panchamabhut and the sukshma panchamabhut. The tan matras are also called sukshma panchamabhut. So all of them, they remain in that Supreme Self. Tatha chakshuhu cha indriyam rupam cha drashtavyam cha. In the same way, chakshu, the eyes. What are the eyes? The indriyas, the sense organ through which we see rupa, we see form. So the eyes, with all that the eyes can see, also remains in that self. Again, shrotram cha shrotavyam cha, the ears and all that can be heard. Granam, the smell and all that which can be smelled. Rasascha, the taste and all that can be tasted. Tvakcha, the skin and all that which can be touched. Tvakcha sparshitavyam cha, vakcha, then again speech, the karmendriya speech, and all that which can be spoken. Then hand and all that which can be held. Then upastha, the organ of urination. And anandayitavyam cha, and all the pleasures one gets from the organ of urination. Then payushcha, the organ of excretion. And visarjitavyam cha, and all that can be excreted. Padaucha, then the feet, and wherever one can go by the feet. Then buddhi indriyani, karmendriyani, tatha cha uktani. So all these jnanendriya and karmendriyas are included here. Then manascha, purvoktam mantavyam cha, then mind and whatever can be thought with the mind, the object of the mind. Then buddhischa nishyatmika, buddhi is nishyatmika buddhi. With the help of buddhi one takes decisions. So buddhi along with all that can be decided, all that can be thought of by the buddhi, the object of the buddhi. Then ahankar, abhimana lakshanam, ahankar, that attitude of having that sense of I, which is also a thought. See, this ahankar is also part of the antakarana, and atma is sakshi of this ahankar also. The kshetrajna is sakshi of this ahankar also. Kshetrajna is sakshi of ahankar. So ahankarascha abhimana lakshanam antakaranam ahankartavyam. So all the Vishaya of Ahankar. Then Chitta. Chitta is that with which one becomes aware, one recollects. Chetana vad antakaranam, which is part of that antakarana only, and chetayitavyam, and all that can be thought of, all that can be recollected. All these factors, they remain abiding in the self. Tejascha tvat indriya vatirekena. Then again, very interesting, the teacher also talks about tejas. Here this teja is different from what was mentioned before. Before the teja and tejo matra was mentioned, but again this teja is mentioned, which is different from our skin and which is there all pervading in the body, that heat which is there in this body. The heat which is there in this body, when a person dies, enveloped in this heat, the prana moves out. So that heat is indicated here as teja. So tejasya tvat indriya vatirekena prakasha vishishta ya tvat taya nirbhasyo vishayo vidyotayitavyam. So that heat and its vishay and its function, in which it functions. Then prana, the prana, which is also called sutratma, and yet achakshate tena vidharayitavyam, and whatever is held by that prana, sangrataniyam sarvam hi karyakarana jatam, all that is the cause and the effect. Pararthena samhatam nama rupatmakam etavat eva, all of them, they remain stationed in the self. They remain supported by the self. So when we go to sleep, then we remain with that Brahma alone. We remain as that Sat Brahma, as that Ananda Brahma. Everything remains as Ananda Brahma. There are no divisions of any kind. There is no Dvaita. Only that Advaita Brahma alone is there. Even now, Advaita Brahma alone is there, but due to ignorance we see difference. But in deep sleep, the expression of this ignorance is not there. So only Brahma alone is there. See, many acharyas, they call this deep sleep as Anandamay Kosh. But it is not Anandamay Kosh. Deep sleep is not Anandamay Kosh. Anandamay Kosh, in Anandamay Kosh there are divisions of a different range of happiness, like Priya, Mod and Pramoda. So this Priya, Mod and Pramoda is experienced when the mind is active. When we think about some objects, we feel very happy. When we see that object, we feel more happy. When we possess that object and enjoy that object, we feel more happy. So this happiness, range of happiness which we experience is the Anandamay Kosha. But Sushupti, in Sushupti, there are no range of happiness. Everyone gets the same supreme bliss. Esha Paramanandaha. That bliss which we experience in deep sleep is indicated as Paramananda. It is not Anandamay Kosh. There are no divisions of any kind. There is only that Brahma. No, nothing. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma alone is there. But since one has not in that enlightenment, the samskars are also retained, and then due to that samskar, again the mind wakes up, and again we continue to experience Dvaita. Again we continue to experience samsara. Hmm. Just as to give an example, there is this rope, and you mistake that rope to be a snake. So rope is there in a place which is not well lit, and you look at it and you think there is a snake because the rope looks like a snake. The rope appears like a snake. So for your eyes, you see the snake, but not knowing the rope, you think it is a real snake. But actually it is a rope. So when the whole thing becomes dark, let us say you switch off the light and all, everything is dark, then what happens to the snake? The snake remains there as rope because it is rope only. So the snake remains as rope. But when again that light comes a little bit, faint light, then again you see, oh, there is a snake. Similarly, this body, mind, intellect, this whole world, everything is Brahma only. But due to our ignorance, we see divisions. But in deep sleep, the mind remains quiet, so we don't see any division, so we remain there as Brahma. Then again the mind wakes up, and again we continue with our ignorance. So atat param yad atma rupam jala suryakadivat bhoktritva kartritvena iha anupravishtam. So in that deep sleep, the Panchamahabhut, the Tanmatras, the Karmendriya, the Jnanendriya, the Antakarana Chatushtay, the Pranas, all of them, they remain in that Supreme Self as the Self. But what about that Kshetrajna? What about that innermost self? What happened to it? That is now indicated in the next mantra. So let us chant mantra number 9. एष हि द्रष्टा स्पृष्टा श्रोता घ्राता रसयिता मंता बोद्धा कर्ता विज्ञानात्मा पुरुषः स परे अक्षरे आत्मनि संप्रतिष्ठते. Again, एष हि द्रष्टा स्पृष्टा श्रोता घ्राता रसयिता मंता बोद्धा कर्ता विज्ञानात्मा पुरुषः स परे अक्षरे आत्मनि संप्रतिष्ठते. So all the things which were mentioned in the previous mantra, Prithvi and Prithvi Matra, Apa and Apo Matra, then the Indriyas, the Antakarana, all these are nothing but Kshetra only. Idam, 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 what we experience as idam. But who is this I who is experiencing all this? Who is this I who is knowing all this? That I is the Kshetrajna. Kshetrajna. So with my eyes, when I look at this world, the eyes appear to be looking, but behind the eyes are the mind. So mind appears to be knowing, but behind the mind is that innermost self, the Kshetrajna. So Kshetrajna alone looks through the mind, through the eyes. So Kshetrajna is the real seer. See, just like there is a building or there is a house of many floors, then you see on the upper floor the window is there, and suddenly the window is opened, and someone is looking out of that window. Someone staying in that house is looking out of that window. So it might appear the window is looking, but window is not looking. That person who is inside is looking. But if the window is shut, then the person cannot look. When the window is open, then he can look out. But one who is looking is that person, not the window. Similarly, the eyes are just a window. Who is looking? That Antaratma, the Kshetrajna, the Pratyagatma, the Jiva, who is also called the Jiva. That Jiva is looking. That Pratyagatma is looking. That Pratyagatma is called, is the real Drashta. Eshahi Drashta. Sprashta, he alone is the Sprashta, one who touches. When I touch something, my skin is touching that object and I experience that sense of touch. But who is the one who is touching? That Antaratma only. Shrota, listening. Who is listening? That Antaratma. Ghrata, who is smelling, getting the fragrance, that Antaratma. Rasayita, who is tasting, the Antaratma. Manta, who is thinking, I. Bodha, who is knowing, I, the Atma. Karta, who is the Karta, I. Vijnanatma is also called Vijnanatma. That Antaratma, the Kshetrajna, the Purusha, the Jiva is also called Vijnanatma. He is called Purusha because he pervades the body, the mind, the senses, everything. Therefore, he is called Purusha. Sub, that Purusha, in deep sleep, what happens? Sab pare akshare atmani sampratisthate. That Purusha also remains abiding in that Param Atma. Here Shankaracharya gives an example. He says, कि पुरुष सच जल सूर्य का आदि प्रतिबिंबस्य सूर्यादि प्रवेशवत् जगत आधार शेषे परे अक्षरे आत्मनि संप्रतिष्ठते. He says, just like the reflection of the sun in the waters. Reflection of the sun is there in the waters. And that reflection is as powerful as the sun. And that reflection of the sun alone then illumines the surrounding. Suppose you have kept a bucket full of water in your balcony, and the sun is reflected in that bucket of water, and because of that reflection, your room also gets illumined. So who is illumining your room? That reflection. Means indirectly the sun is illumining. But what happens when you remove that bucket of water? Then the room becomes dark. But what happens to the reflection? The reflection again goes and becomes one with the sun. Similarly, that Antaratma, that Kshetrajna, who is expressing through the mind, through the intellect, through the senses, and has become the seer, knower, thinker, feeler. But when the mind, senses, and all they just remain dormant, when they are not active, then what happens to that Antaratma? It remains as the Supreme Self. It remains as Brahma. Hmm? It doesn't appear to see, hear, taste, touch. It doesn't appear to think, feel. But when the mind is active, the senses are active, it appears to see, feel, think. Hmm? So Jala Surya Kadi Pratibimbasya Suryadi Praveshvat Jagat Adhara Seshe Pare Akshare Atmani Sampratistate. So it remains abiding in that Param Atma. Hmm? So that question which the disciple had asked, that is being answered here. कि कस्मिन्नु सर्वे संप्रतिष्ठिता भवन्ति iti. That when one goes to sleep, where do all these factors reside? Where do they remain? They remain in that Supreme Self alone. See, from a very cosmic standpoint, from a cosmic standpoint, when we think, when the world goes into pralay, then everything gets dissolved. The in the reverse order, everything gets dissolved. The animal, birds, human beings, all of them, they merge into the second Trivrit Karana. The second Trivrit Karana merges into the first Trivrit Karana. Then that also merges into the Pancha Mahabhut, which is that Vaishvanara. And Vaishvanara merges into Hiranyagarbha. Vaishvanara dissolves into Hiranyagarbha. And Hiranyagarbha also dissolves into Ishvara. And Ishvara alone remains. Sadeva Saumya Idamagra Asit. When the entire creation gets dissolved, then Sat alone is there. No division of any kind. No one else is there. Na anyat kinchana nishata. Nothing else is there. Then from that Ishvara alone, Hiranyagarbha is born. Then from Hiranyagarbha, Vaishvanara is born. Then from Vaishvanara, all the Devatas are born. And all the plants are born. And all human beings and animals are born. The entire world is born. This is the world goes into complete pralay. But world also goes into a semi-pralay when Brahmaji goes to sleep. Every day, Brahmaji also goes to sleep. Hiranyagarbha goes to sleep. So that time what happens, the Vaishvanara along with the entire creation dissolves into Hiranyagarbha. And Hiranyagarbha alone is there. So everything remains as Hiranyagarbha. Then again, when Hiranyagarbha wakes up, another Vaishvanara is born. Then another set of devatas are born, and the plants are born, and humans are born. I hope you are understanding what I'm saying. Huh? All this we have seen before also, but we tend to forget whatever we have learned before. So this Brahmaji, Hiranyagarbha, he lives for 100 years. He is 100 years. And in one of his years, there are 360 days. In one year of Hiranyagarbha, there are 360 days. So every day when he goes to sleep, Vaishvanara get dissolved and a new Vaishvanara is born when he wakes up. So when Brahmaji wakes up, again the whole Srishti is born. So same thing happens at an individual level. When we go to sleep, everything remains dissolved in the self. Everything is supported by that Supreme Self. And when the mind intellect wakes up, again the whole Srishti is seen. So what is that Supreme Self in which everything is residing? What is the nature of that Supreme Self? That is being conveyed now in the following mantra. So let us chant. Mantra number 10. Parama eva aksharam pratipadyate स यो हवै तत् अच्छायम् अशरीरम् अलोहितं शुभ्रम् अक्षरं वेदयते यस्तु सौम्य स सर्वज्ञः सर्वो भवति तदेष श्लोकः. Again. परम एव अक्षरम प्रतिपद्यते स यो हवै तत् अच्छायम् अशरीरम् अलोहितं शुभ्रम् अक्षरं वेदयते यस्तु सौम्य स सर्वज्ञः सर्वो भवति तदेष श्लोकः. So the teacher tells the student, "Hey Swami, oh my dear student, the one who knows this Akshara, the Supreme Self. What is the nature of the Supreme Self? Aksharam. It is Akshar, it is free from all changes, it is indestructible. That Supreme Self is indestructible, Aksharam. One who knows this, it is also Tad Achayam. It is free from Chaya. It is free from all reflections. It doesn't have a body, Ashariram. Alohitam, it doesn't have any qualities. Shubhram, it is pure. Aksharam, it is indestructible. Vedayate yastu samya, one who knows this innermost, that Supreme Self. So sarvajnyaha sarvo bhavati, he becomes all-knowing and he becomes everything. Tadesha shlokaha. Regarding this, there is this following mantra. So this mantra we will see again in the our class on Monday. Till then, you take care. Be happy, safe, peaceful, healthy. Do your work, do your sadhana. Listen to the pravachan again. Contemplate on the pravachan and contemplate on your own deep sleep state. Try to understand with the guidance of the Shastras. Try to understand your deep sleep. And we will meet again on Monday. Hari Om. Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram. 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 Jaya Jaya Ram. Jaya Jaya Ram. Bole Siya Ramchandra Bhagwan ki Jai. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.